Hello my darlings! Last video we talked about a show that is currently running that I enjoy, but today I'm going to talk about a show that I love that has just ended. DreamWorks' Trollhunters. Trollhunters, created by Guillermo del Toro of Shape of Water, Pan's Labyrinth, and Crimson Peak fame, is about 15-year-old Jim Lake Jr., who lives in the small town of Arcadia Oaks, California, and he seems to be a relatively normal kid. Until he is riding his bike to school with his best friend Toby one day, and they find this magical amulet that seems to be calling Jim's name. Later, Jim finds out that he has actually been called to a magical destiny by the wizard Merlin, who no one has seen in 1,000 years, to protect the society of trolls that lives under his hometown. And the mantle is known as the Trollhunter. Now I'm going to level with you, my darlings. If you were to ask me what my top 3 favorite genres were, fantasy would not be up there. It's in my top 10, sure, but it's not one of my absolute favorites. However, Trollhunters came into my life in a very important period in my life as something to lift my spirits. I had just lost someone very recently around the time I started watching it, and I was looking for something to lift my spirits and just make me happy. And the first season of Trollhunters is good for that. However, what really drew me in was how they did so well in taking these fantasy chosen one hero story tropes and twisting them just enough to be interesting. My favorite thing about Jim at the very beginning is that, you know, like every hero, you know, Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, he's kind of unremarkable. But he was sweet and kind and loving. The first scene you ever see him in, he lives with his mom, who's a single mother, and a doctor, so he really takes care of her. So the first thing you ever see him do is getting up in the morning and cleaning the house, cooking dinner, making meals, just to make life a little bit easier on her. And the first line you ever hear him say is,
"Love you, Mom."
And I knew from the moment that he said that, I was gonna be on this hero's side. Because so many other hero shows initially start to focus on how strong or how smart or how ambitious the character is, and eventually start to focus on how the character loves. Jim's establishing moment is how much he loves his mother and the people around him. And that's really refreshing to see a hero that is not so focused on his personal strength, but just on loving the people who are around him. You really see this not only with his mother, but with his best friend Toby. There's this great exchange kind of towards the middle of the series, because in the first episode, Toby and Jim talk about how Jim's always looking for adventure. And of course, Toby, being the best friend, gets brought along for the ride, because of course he does. That's the adventure story. And he says, Toby asks Jim something along the lines of, "Aren't you glad we went through the canal that day?" And basically, Jim says, "Yes, because you were there with me." And there's just so much love and so much appreciation for Jim as a character. He's the kind of hero you really want to follow through the show. And then there's Jim's crush, Claire, who, what I love so much about it is that it's not one of those stories of the geeky guy only getting the popular girl after she finds out that he's the hero. And like, you know that she's in the title sequence, you kind of figure out that she's gonna be part of the adventure eventually. I'm not spoiling much by saying that. But she genuinely seems to care about him back even before she figures out why he's being kind of weird. He auditions for the play because she asked him to. They're doing Romeo and Juliet. And he just keeps acting really weird and flaky, but you get the sense that Claire cares about him too. It's my favorite thing about Trollhunters. It's all about how the characters love each other. And I've just talked about the human characters. There's Jim's relationship with his mentor, Blinkus Gladrigal, known as Blinky, who's played by Kelsey Grammer. And when I heard his voice in this show, I was like, yes, because he's so funny. He's book smart and eccentric, and he's just a really funny character, Blinky is. And you can tell even without the creators really saying it, that he cares for Jim much more than just like a mentor-mentee relationship. And it's very sweet to see how this love just drives these characters. And then there's Arg, who is this hulking brute of a troll. But he's a pacifist, and he and Toby get along really well, to the point where they start calling each other wingmen, and it's just... I love that this show is about how much these people love each other, that they'll be willing to fight for one another. And then there's the villains, and so there's this... In the first season, there's this evil troll named Bular. I swear this makes sense if you watch it. There's this evil troll named Bular, and even his motivation is driven by love. Basically, his father, Gunmar, is trapped in this place called the Darklands, and Bular, as evil as he is, his entire character arc is about how he loves his father so much he wants to free him. At least that's a lot of what I got out of it. Now don't get me wrong, they're evil. They want to destroy the world. These are evil, evil characters. But, you know, again, it's a story that's about love and how love drives you. And that's the point they really make with Jim's character throughout the entire show, is that he is so different. He's the first human troll hunter. He is so different from all the other previous troll hunters because he lets his love for his friends drive him and not push them away the way previous troll hunters have. Not to mention, there's some great lines in this show, a lot of which I've started integrating into my everyday life, such as...
Jim, if you fancy Miss Nunez, I submit that talking to will be much more effective than staring at.
Or...
A life of almost is a life of never.
And my personal favorite...
Don't think, Master Jim. Become.
And that's the one I want to get tattooed on my shoulder. Because Jim's whole character arc is about embracing his fear, but not letting it stop him. And I love that, and I've found that when I've started integrating that into my life, telling myself, do not think, don't think, become. I found that that is the way I want to live my life. And I know it's silly, this, you know, kids show with so many body humor jokes. I'm like, every once in a while I'm like, oh yeah, this is a DreamWorks show. But that's okay. But all of the heart and the belief it has in itself balances out all that other stuff. And it's just a good show about how our humanity is not defined by how strong we are, but how much we can love people. And I really appreciate that. Now, what about you? I know there's a lot of stuff I didn't touch on, but I mainly just wanted to talk about like why I love this show. But I want to hear what you have to say. Like, do you watch it? Are there any shows that you think kind of go along with that idea? Do you have some criticisms against Trollhunters? Because there are some very fair ones, I will admit. Especially concerning the season 3 ending, which we will not discuss. But I do want to hear your opinion, and if you haven't watched it, if you have time, sit down. It's so much fun. And it's actually part of a much larger series about to come out with its second part, the Tales of Arcadia series, which its second part, 3 Below, is about to come out, and I'm super excited. I'm so ready to see how they take these other characters, put them in Arcadia, and how they interact and how they change the world. So I just want to hear from you. And if not, have a nice day, my darlings.